on the autism spectrum. He's 3 years younger than I am. And this is what I do for a living. So like many of you, he's 29 now. He's molded me into who I am, and my relationship with him is a big part of my story of why I do what I do and why I'm really passionate about that. And that passion drives me. And what I quickly realized is when I started working in special education, so I have a master's in early childhood special ed from University of Florida, it's frustrating when we're working with therapists and teachers if it's not being carried over in the house. And so I was like, I just really want to go to the heart of the matter. Like, I want to skip all this and I just want to go in the home. And then when we're talking about it in context with siblings, play is something that children just naturally, instinctually lean into. And people on the spectrum play differently. They play, their play looks very different than what we would expect neurotypical play to look like, right? And siblings, at least I know, I'm the eldest of 4, and Jay, my brother, is number 3 in line. So he grew up in a house with lots of kids, lots of peer models, and honestly didn't get formally diagnosed until he was 15 and didn't get any support until he was like 20. So it was all naturalistic learning for him. And so what's so powerful, I think, as siblings is we don't even realize the influence we have, but we're just so intuitive with what our sibling is communicating, what they're doing, and how to connect with them. And so much time working with this population is figuring out, how do we build that connection? And we have this superpower as siblings, because many of us, and not all, my other brother did not easily connect with Jay, but my sister and I, and myself mostly, had a very strong, powerful connection with him. So before I even dive into what I feel like is very little content, because I really want to highlight the siblings and hear what you guys have to say, and I could talk for hours about this, I just want to honor and highlight that, because there is so much power and beauty. And so if you're going into the field, that intuition that helps you connect with your sibling and really led you to where you are, that's going to be your greatest tool going forward. It's my greatest tool in my profession and the work that I do with families and parents. We can give people insights that others just don't have into that differently wired brain. And it's just so doggone beautiful. So it's very little, but I like having visual learners, and visuals are helpful. So I love marrying brain science. So all this neurobiology and like all this stuff, you're speaking my language. I love this stuff. I read it for fun. My husband thinks I'm crazy sometimes, but with compassion. Because I feel like that understanding of the brain, and then that empathy and compassion, that connection, is really where we find we make beautiful relationships, we can make beautiful strides, and we really celebrate the person, right? And in the context and across different contexts. So this is a visual I use all the time. Behavior is communication. So it's not personal. They're just trying to tell us stuff. If you take any type of like speech and debate class, any type of writing class, any type of communication class, they're going to tell you 90% of communication is nonverbal. What's nonverbal communication? It's behavior. So even if there's not verbal in the way that we neurotypical people, like we talk, there's a lot of communication going on underneath, and there's all of these needs. And so we look at this, and this is something, again, that intuition, siblings so much intuitively know how to phrase things the way our siblings need to hear them, how to connect with them, when to go fast and when to slow down, how to modulate those interactions so beautifully and so naturally. And so much of that will really speak to those needs underneath. So this is a visual I use a lot with parents. but it works well with any relationship in any paradigm, because a lot of times we can take behavior personally, especially right now during the holidays. I drove from North Lake to Indiantown Road yesterday, and I'm pretty sure people were trying to kill me. Like, pretty sure people on the roads have a death wish right now, and I was taking it very personally. And then we get stuck in our emotional brain, which I'll talk about a little bit. And so then I was getting really angry, and that's not helpful, right? I'm not a safe driver when I'm angry. So the first thing we do when we're dealing with people who may not be behaving in a way that we necessarily like is to not take it so personally, because then we can turn on our curiosity. And that curiosity is what's going to help us decode the behavior. There's such beauty, and curiosity is non-judgmental. So we have very open energy. Instead of trying to evaluate and either condemn or praise the behavior, it feels very judgmental, which puts off a very closed, harsh energy. And we just know that, I think on the next slide, the paradigm shifts. The autistic brain, I'm skipping all the way down the last bullet point because I don't follow rules that well. The autistic brain is more attuned and sensitive to the world around them. And it used to be like when my brother was having struggles in school, so in the 90s and even earlier, you know, when there was not a lot of knowledge about it, they used to think it wasn't connected to the world. There was this like disconnect. And now overwhelmingly what the research is telling us is that they're over attuned. They notice sounds and sights and information that we miss. So that being said, really not to take it personally and attune to those needs underneath is really important. So anyway, these are the paradigm shifts that I generally talk about with parents. We've covered ad nauseam behaviors, communication. Misbehavior is a missing skill. This is one of my favorites. So limit learning versus limit testing. So one of the things, if you're a parent of any child, they're just testing you, or even a sibling. They just want to know what they can get away with. It puts this very adversarial energy into the situation. So we're going like this, being about sibling rivalry or power struggles between parents and children, instead of limit learning. And then our job becomes to teach. Hey, Sam, I'm going to use your example, pounding on the head. You know, hey, ouch, that hurts. You know, he needs to learn what's too hard. Sometimes this is okay, but if you start slamming on me, I'm going to have something to say about it, right? So it's not necessarily the testing that puts off that adversarial energy, but the limit learning, and then we're cooperating and we're working together. So I teach this for all children, neurodiverse and neurotypical, but they're wired for connection, not disconnection. Their way of connecting may look different though. And that's true of all people. I like to connect differently than my husband likes to connect. And that looks very different than how my brother likes to connect with us. My brother likes to talk to me about airplanes and World War I bombers. And that's his way of connecting. And that's just different than how I like to connect. So believe, and I love this so much because this is one of my life philosophies, believe that your child has the best intention, because they do. So believing even in the hardest, most challenging moments and the embarrassing moments, you know, we're like red in the face, like, oh my gosh, are we really doing this right now? They're doing the best they can with what they have available in this moment. And that varies from situation to situation. And then I talked about the discipline to teach. So I consider this to be a life-changing model. I love this model so much. And I use this for adults. I use this in my marriage. I use this for all children. And I definitely use it when I'm doing behavioral work with kids on the spectrum or any sort of diagnosis. But the survival state, the emotional state, and the executive state. So when we fluctuate, like I was saying, when people were driving like they had a death wish yesterday on I-95, and I was talking back and yelling. I didn't have kids in the car, just for the record. I was yelling. I wasn't very happy. I was in that emotional state. I wasn't problem solving, right? I didn't have all my executive function, all my facility on, until I decided, oh, you know what? I need to chill out for a minute and just get in the far lane and let these speed demons just go on by. not my thing, right? So looking at the brain state model and looking at, okay, the behavior, again, that message is sending you, am I safe? Then our job becomes, I can help you feel safe. You're safe with me. Or if, and again, emotional, whether verbal or not verbal, they can have these emotional behaviors. The reason why they say a lot of verbal activities in the emotional state is because those are things like, you never let me do anything, you're the meanest teacher. Or maybe a verbal stim, when they start getting nervous, they'll start repeating the same words. I worked with a little boy yesterday, and his verbal stims are dates. We start talking about numbers. It's a super common one, right? We start, my brother, we start talking about airplanes or his pretend video game that he makes up. That's when I know he's nervous, and that anxiety is sticking him into the emotional state. So that's when I need to stick with them and work on that connection. And then we can bump up into problem solving. And once we access that executive function, that's where we can start working on skills. If we try and skip to skills, if we try to reason and logic with somebody, anybody, even I use the example of when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I start saying, to my husband, you never help me with anything. It's not true. Like, I'm talking in hyperbolic language. It's not true, but it feels that way in that moment, right? And so then I need a limited question. Do you want me to help you cook dinner or help you with the kids? Okay, I'll take the kids outside. Then I can start problem solving. If he were to just come in and start problem solving, you're not even listening to me. What are you talking about? Right? And so different behaviors can cue us into, where are they in the brain state model? Where can I meet them there and help move them up to where we can be together and cooperate together? So play, I promised you guys play. And these are the cool things. And this is where I think the sibs could really jump in and tell us, like, games you remember from childhood, interactions. You probably still interact in some of these ways and you don't even notice it because it's just so intuitive, which is magic. But mirroring is one of my favorite things to use for kiddos, like very defensive kiddos who don't like you in their space, may turn away, maybe they're in a really agitated state, and you just sit there and you start noticing. And sometimes it'll be something like, if their fingers are on their head like this, I'll just kind of start going like this, mirroring what they're doing. Rhythm and playing with rhythm. So if they're clapping or flapping or beating or doing something like that, and then we're rhythm, 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 stop, and slowing down and creating some, and then go, and rhythm, rhythm. And this can work. I do this with my kids. You can do it with young kids. Even older kids like this to a certain extent. Adults, because when we feel noticed, when we feel mirrored, helps us feel noticed. Those things help us feel seen, heard, and understood, which is one of our biggest human desires. Rhythm is very soothing to the brain. We're rhythmic creatures. From the moment we're in the womb, we're listening to our mother's heartbeat. It's why we sway with babies. It's a reason why there's music therapy, right? Rhythm is very soothing. Slowing down and creating some fun suspense. So this is something I love to do. This is why babies love peekaboo. And then peekaboo eventually graduates to hide and seek, and to that suspense, and it helps break that tension. So we can play stop go games, freeze games. And these are actually all based in floor time. Sorry, I'm like blanking for a second. Floor time DRI intervention, and then Dr. Solomon turned it into the play project. So there's actually functional developmental levels of these different games, and we help kids move up the ladder of social interaction through these certain games. Then language and play that promotes connection. So the safety is, I'm here with you, I notice you, there's no judgment. You keep beating that book. Look at your hand. It's going up and down like that. There's no judgment. It's, hey, that's annoying. Knock it off. Stop. Which, I mean, come on, that's like all siblings, right? But parents do it too, because it's like overwhelming to us. But if we take that moment to notice and non-judgmental, it helps the other person feel safe. Then we can connect with them and say, oh man, either validate what they're feeling, listen to the message. I notice you tap like that when you're nervous. Is something going on? Or maybe they can't tell us, maybe we're just leaning into that situation. And again, we're not minimizing, lecturing, or trying to rationalize it away. We're just trying to join in that message and that feeling. All right, you don't like that. And let that sink in for a moment. And one of my favorite things to do in this to increase connection time, because isn't that like, that's the hard part, is like increasing those moments of connection. How do we do that? And I get asked this all the time, not just with kids on the spectrum, but ADHD too, because they're like, and a lot of times there's those co-diagnoses. So you get the like, they're all over the place. And it's this thing called taffy pulling. And all that is, I did it the other day. I was playing with the kiddo and we were working on frustration tolerance because he doesn't like to wait and he doesn't like to lose. And waiting and losing happen sometimes. And so it would be my turn. We were playing Parcheesi. And I'd pick up the dice and I'd shake, 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 shake. And I'd act like I would roll. And then I would just kind of stop. And he wasn't making eye contact. He wasn't making eye contact. And then all of a sudden he'd look up. And then I shake, 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 shake. and then finally he goes, Miss Caley, why aren't you rolling? And I was like, okay, I'll roll now. But it was taffy pulling. It was elongating those moments of connection and really going back and forth with those bids to increase the time of joint attention, because then we can increase the quality and quantity of the connection we have with the other person.